dans quelques minutes. Donc, pas de microphone pour le moment, mais bonne séance. Merci beaucoup.
Dear colleagues, very warm welcome to the second day of the celebration of International Literacy Day 2021. Welcome to the special session for the laureates of the UNESCO International Literacy Prizes 2021. Since 1967, UNESCO International Literacy Prizes have rewarded excellence and innovation in the field of literacy. Since then, over 500 projects and programs undertaken by governments, non-governmental organizations, and individuals around the world have been recognized and valued. Through these prestigious prizes, UNESCO seeks to support effective literacy practices and encourage the promotion of dynamic literate societies. This session is dedicated to the new laureates of the 2020 edition of the UNESCO International Literacy Prizes, and to present 6 outstanding literacy programs from Côte d'Ivoire, Egypt, Guatemala, India, Mexico, and South Africa, and to reflect on main factors that enable inclusive distance and digital learning literacy programs. This session will be followed by another session that will look at the futures of literacy as we presented yesterday. Let me welcome the ambassadors from the Republic of Korea, Mr. And His Excellency, Mr. Dong Ji Kim. I would like also to welcome His Excellency, the ambassador of from China, His Excellency Mr. Yang Jin, and I would like to welcome all the laureates and the chair of the jury prizes, Mr. John Bensman, and my colleague, Madame Stefania Giannini, Assistant Director General for Education. Without delay, we'll watch a video from the Director General, Madame Audrey Azoulay.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, international de l'alphabétisation est toujours un moment très particulier pour nous dans l'année. D'abord parce que c'est l'occasion d'honorer toutes celles et ceux qui se dévouent pour que chacun puisse apprendre à lire et à écrire. Et c'est grâce à l'engagement, à la détermination de femmes et d'hommes comme ceux que nous allons récompenser aujourd'hui, que le monde a pu faire des pas de géant en ce qui concerne l'alphabétisation ces 40 dernières années. En 4 décennies seulement, 3,6 milliards de personnes supplémentaires ont appris à lire et à écrire. Et au niveau mondial, le taux d'alphabétisation est passé de 68 à 86% de la population. Mais aujourd'hui, cette journée internationale prend une signification toute particulière. D'abord en Afghanistan, où les progrès spectaculaires accomplis en 20 ans, notamment pour les filles, sont en péril. C'est en Afghanistan, vous le savez, que l'UNESCO a mené sa plus grande campagne d'alphabétisation depuis 2006, auprès de 1,2 million d'Afghans, et très majoritairement des filles et des femmes. Je le dis, je le répète, l'éducation des Afghans et des Afghanes doit pouvoir se poursuivre. C'est tout le futur du pays qui en dépend. Mais plus largement, ces progrès que nous avons accomplis en matière d'alphabétisation dans le monde entier sont fragilisés par la pandémie de Covid-19. Celle-ci a exacerbé les inégalités éducatives en affectant davantage les plus marginalisés. Ladies and gentlemen, today we are more aware than ever of how precious yet fragile literacy really is. This is why, at the outset of the pandemic, UNESCO launched the Global Education Coalition. With more than 100 partners, we've been able to take action in 180 countries to provide learning solutions via radio, television, and the internet. And this is why I would like to thank very much today our laureates from South Africa, Côte d'Ivoire, Egypt, Guatemala, India, and Mexico for carrying out projects during this critical time. You have used creativity and innovation to reach as many people as possible. You have literally changed the lives of thousands of children, young people, women, and marginalized adults. And for all this, in the name of UNESCO, I would like to thank you. I would also like to thank the Republic of Korea and the People's Republic of China for supporting year after year the UNESCO King Sejong Literacy Prize and the UNESCO Confucius Prize. And I would like to conclude quoting Malala Yousafzai, the Nobel Prize winner in 2014, whose words still resonate today in Central Asia. The content of a book holds the power of education, and it is with this power that we can shape our future and change lives. I thank you.
Merci à Madame la Directrice.
Thank you, Director General, Ms. Audrey Azoulay, for that message. If I may, I'd now like to give the floor to Stefania Giannini, who's ADG for Education at UNESCO, for introductory remarks. Over to you. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, a warm welcome, first of all, to the second day of the International Conference. And we come to a much awaited and very special moment today, the awarding of the 2021 UNESCO International Literacy Prizes. The challenge for this edition, as already announced yesterday, focused on inclusive distance and digital literacy learning. You will agree with me, I'm sure, that the theme of today could not be more timely. Each of today's 6 prize winners has a solid track in the field. I would say they are pioneers in this field. Whether NGOs, no-profits, universities, or national institutes, they are successfully reaching some of the most marginalized learners in the world: indigenous people, children with disabilities, workers on markets and construction sites, and so on. They use, I would say, an innovative, interesting mix of technologies and adapt contents to need, with sensibility to each learner and context. I see, in other words, each one of these winners driven by a sense of care and imagination. And we know that care and imagination are really critical words in the current troubled times. They are actually true change makers. Let's meet them then, starting with the UNESCO Kim Se-young Literary Prize awarded to this year 3 laureates. First, the Broadcasting Bilingual Stories program of the NGO Limitless Horizons Exil in Guatemala. Since 2004, you have created a real culture of reading among indigenous children and youth through libraries, educational broadcasting, and academic support in the community of Chayul. Second, to the program enabling education of persons with disabilities through technology-enabled inclusive learning material of India's National Institute of Open Schooling. Well, actually, this program is allowing millions of learners with disabilities to complete their schooling thanks to sign language-based content using a range of digital tools. Finally, to the program using digital technologies to promote children's literature in South Africa's indigenous languages. And this is about the NGO Puku's Children's Literature Foundation commitment in South Africa. Inspired for sure by Nelson Mandela's wish, quoting, that all children in the world may experience the wonder of books. This is very inspiring, still thought for all of us. This organization promotes reading and book development to ensure that all children, actually, especially those in the most deprived areas, have access to reading in all South African languages. And we know the richness and importance of variety of languages in learning. So many congratulations deeply and warmly to these first 3 round of laureates. Now we move to the second prize, UNESCO Confucius Prize for Literacy, also awarded to 3 laureates this year. First, to the program Functional Literacy for Traders in Abidjan through the use of ICT of the NGO Gatik Côte d'Ivoire. This program is empowering women traders with functional literacy skills through digital technology, helping them improve their living and also gain access to vital health information during the pandemic. I saw something concretely on the field during last mission in Côte d'Ivoire, and it was really very impressive to see the improvement they bring. Then to the program organizing online literacy classes for rural areas in Egypt of the Ain Shams University. And this is true another very interesting example of community engagement of a higher education institution, focusing on empowering rural girls and women with literacy and digital skills they need today with a range of economic and social services. It's about the third mission, so-called, of university. Finally, the Building and Growing program of the Mexican no-profit organization Construyendo y Creciendo, providing people with low or no literacy skills, especially construction workers and their communities, a second chance, so to say, to obtain an officially recognized and very comprehensive education of good quality. Well, congratulations still to all these 3 winners of the Confucius Prize as well. Well, I think that transformative and confidence building dimension of which these programs leaves no doubt, for sure. And I wish to express my deep appreciation to the government of the Republic of Korea for its support to the UNESCO Kim Se-young Literacy Prize, and to the government of the People's Republic of China for its support to the UNESCO Confucius Prize for Literacy. This is very much about commitment and supporting so concrete actions and the culture of the importance of literacy today. Allowing me also to thank the president of the jury, Mr. John Densman from New Zealand, and all jury members for their dedication, their time, and their engagement in this amazing process. Forgive me for not citing you by name in the interest of time, but really thinking of the great job you are doing. And once again, congratulations to our 6 laureates. I wish that I could award your prizes in person, but unfortunately, due to the current circumstances, still we are here on Zoom through the screen. But I'm pleased that our field offices will be organizing special ceremonies to honor you. I'm convinced that all these programs, all your engagement, or your daily commitment on the ground will inspire other initiatives around the world and make literacy accessible to all, even in the toughest of circumstances. I thank you, all of you, for your attention.
Thank you, Stefania, for your speech and for engaging with the different laureates and announcing the successful selection of the laureates. You kindly also refer to the important work that is done by the jury members. And of course, we want to hear from the jury members represented by the chair of the jury, Mr. John Binsiman. John is joining us from New Zealand today, so it's very late in the evening in New Zealand now, but John wanted to be with us, and we would like to hear from him the impression and the perspective of the jury members. Please, John, the floor is yours.
Bonjour, tēnā koutou katoa. Greetings from Aotearoa, New Zealand. I am deeply honoured to address you today on behalf of the International Jury for the UNESCO International Literacy Prizes. Serving on the jury is an honour that my colleagues and I have greatly enjoyed, even among the chaos and challenges of the world we live in. Like most aspects of our lives, COVID has changed aspects of literacy for learners and providers alike. Alongside COVID, global warming has also wreaked considerable havoc to make our times as chaotic and harrowing as most of us have known in our lifetimes. Amid all this turmoil, one constant is that literacy remains central to our lives in how it can help us understand the world we live in. Universally, critical literacy has become even more central as we struggle to comprehend COVID and our changing world and how it threatens our well-being. But most of all, literacy can show how to effectively counter these threats to not only individual lives, but also whole communities. Literacy's ability to help us distinguish between facts and falsehoods remains one of our key skills to survive and thrive. However, in this environment, there are some aspects of the literacy world that have changed considerably. Literacy programs have faced sudden and substantial setbacks financially in how they involve their learners. It is difficult to assess the degree of this impact on literacy provision, but it is undoubtedly considerable and likely to continue for some time yet. Face-to-face programs have long been the mainstay of literacy teaching. So with this element currently difficult or even impossible, providers have sought alternative ways to promote literacy teaching. Distance learning, including various forms of technology, have always been used by literacy teachers. But in the current environment, it has now become a mainstay of literacy provision for many, and therefore it is an appropriate focus for this year's awards. Many have had to utilize more conventional teaching strategies where the technology is not available or unreliable. There is no doubt that distance learning, incorporating appropriate technology, will become a central element of provision in the future. As a jury member, I have hugely enjoyed the privilege of reading the wide variety of award applications that come in from around the globe. What always shines through for me is the commitment and determination that literacy providers have to raise the skills of all, and especially those with the fewest resources and life chances. I trust that the literacy world will draw inspiration and insight from this year's winners' stories. They have much to teach us in our efforts to achieve a literate world. Thank you.
Kia ora, John. Thank you very much for joining us today and speaking on behalf of the jury members. And thank you through you. Thanks to all the jury members for the work that has been conducted before summer to select our laureates today. We have heard about the laureates, about who they are, but we will get more detailed introductions of these programs. Let me move now to the next item in our agenda. We will project a video of the literacy prizes and a short video that will introduce us to the next part of our meeting today. Please. This was a very brief introduction of the different programs that we are rewarding this year. Let me start with the King Sejong Literacy Prize and remind a bit about the history. The prize was established in 1989. It is named in the honor of King Sejong of Korea, the 15th century who was responsible for the creation of the Korean alphabet, Hangul. The prize, which recognizes the 3 laureates, pays special attention to mother language-based literacy development. I would like now to give the floor to His Excellency, Ambassador and Permanent Delegate of the Republic of Korea, Mr. Dong Ji Kim. Ambassador, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Mrs. Stefania Giannini, Assistant Director General for Education of UNESCO. His Excellency, Mr. Yang Jin, Ambassador of the People's Republic of China to UNESCO. Mr. John Bensman, Chairman of the International Jury of the Prize. Excellencies, dear laureates, ladies and gentlemen, it is a great honor and pleasure for me to be here with you today for the UNESCO International Literacy Prizes Award ceremony. On behalf of the Republic of Korea, I should now like to extend my warm congratulations to this year's laureates of the UNESCO King Sejong Prize. Limitless Horizons Excel has helped young people to avoid the danger of dropping out of school through technologies such as TV, radio, and academic support during the pandemic. National Institute of Open Schooling has provided not only academic skills, but vocational skills to visually impaired learners through open and distance learning. Puku Children's Literature Foundation has had a meaningful impact on the promotion of reading to ensure that all children have access to books in all South African languages through radio and social media. I wish to once again congratulate and thank each of these for their admirable work for the sake of education for all. I genuinely hope that these success stories will ultimately resonate widely around the world, nurturing dreams and hopes for regions and children lacking educational opportunities. I would, on this occasion, like to give thought to what the UNESCO King Sejong Prize really means. The prize is named after King Sejong the Great, who devised the unique Korean alphabet Hangul in the 15th century. He did so to seek to read and write, regardless of their social status. In this way, knowledge, ideas, and information could be more easily accumulated, exchanged, and utilized in every aspect of society, not only by aristocrats, but indeed ordinary people. Apart from just the ability to read and write, not being able to join the technological breakthroughs tide will ultimately lead to another form of illiteracy. Therefore, through a comprehensive understanding of these recent developments, there is a call to set out a new definition of literacy, recognizing a new meaning of this term, notably for the elderly and the adults. They need to step forward to embrace the call of the times. Still now, education systems around the world are being hit hard by the COVID-19 pandemic. It is disrupted the learning of children, young people, and adults on an unprecedented scale. And indeed, it has magnified inequalities in access to learning opportunities. Distance learning or online learning, avoiding the physical setting in which the spread of disease is possible, have been crucial tools to rectify learning losses of children. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the Republic of Korea pledged stronger support by increasing the number of winners and donations for the prize last year. Generating further momentum, we will engage in even fuller efforts, demonstrating an even deeper commitment to strengthen and promote literacy education through the King Sejong Prize. Once again, let me warmly congratulate the laureates of the 2021 UNESCO International Literacy Prizes. I would also like to take this chance to deeply thank the Secretariat for their tireless efforts in these difficult and turbulent times. Thank you very much.
Gamsahamnida, Ambassador, thank you very much for joining us today and for your remarks. Let us move to the laureates, and we will start with Ms. Filipa Lopez from Guatemala, from Operation Project Development Specialist and representing Limitless Horizon Excel. Buenos días, Filipa. Usted tiene la...
Good morning, Felipe. You have the floor. Thank you very much.
The Literacy Prize for Limitless Horizon Shield's Distance Learning Program. We are humbled to be among the group of laureates carrying out necessary literacy programming throughout the world during this uncertain time. Since 2004, Limitless Horizon Shield has been working to create opportunities for the indigenous youth, women, and families of Xajul, Guatemala, to develop the academic and professional skills needed to effect change in their lives and community. The community of Xajul is a rural, traditional indigenous community that preserves Maya Ixil customs, culture, and language. It is a primarily monolingual town in which the residents speak the indigenous language of Ixil, which is only spoken in the region. For 36 years, it was also the tragic center of the genocide that occurred in Guatemala. Xajul has many challenges. 93% of the population lives in poverty, 60% of adults are illiterate, and only 21% of youth graduate from middle school and 3% from high school. Indigenous girls in particular face many barriers to education. Limitless Horizon Ixil Saber Sin Límites Community Library is the first and only public library in Xajul open to the entire community. It was born out of a clear need. There was no space for learning outside of structured classrooms, no books available in the community, and no culture of literacy or reading. When COVID-19 reached Guatemala and the community of Xajul, our local team developed inclusive distance and digital literacy programming to enable us to continue providing educational resources in the community while schools were closed and library members couldn't visit in person. The factors that enable our program to be effective is the use of accessible technology to disseminate programming to Xajul's youth and the broader community, such as reading bilingual stories and conducting science lessons and activities on the radio, providing math and language lessons on local television, implementing virtual book clubs, and producing and distributing Ixil language health videos on WhatsApp to keep families safe during COVID-19. Our programming is effective as it is broadcasted in both Spanish and Ixil, making the content accessible to monolingual Ixil speakers, as well as children and youth who speak Ixil at home while learning in local schools in Spanish. One of the challenges that we continue to face is that although we are using the technology that is most available to the majority of the community, technology access among Xajul families is still quite limited. We do recognize that the effects of the pandemic on the education and literacy of Xajul's children and youth will last for quite some time. So we plan to continue providing our distance learning opportunities in addition to homework help and tutoring, academic enrichment programs, reading clubs, and book lending services, catalyzing new generations of avid readers and eager learners. We have worked hard since the library's opening in 2010 to foster a changing mindset about literacy, and we have made an incredible impact so far. The prize will enable us to continue developing a culture of reading and literacy in Xajul, providing education opportunities in a community where many generations of children have attended very limited school and have never opened a book before joining our library. We are deeply honored to receive this prize, acknowledging the Maya Ixil people, their resilience, and their beautiful indigenous culture and heritage. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, señora Lopez. Felicidades.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Lopez.
And we would like to congratulate the National Institute of Open Schooling in India. And I'm pleased to welcome the chairperson, Mrs. Saroj Sharma. Namaste. Please, the floor is yours.
Namaste. Warm greetings from National Institute of Open Schooling, India. And I feel honored along with my team to be present here on this forum. And thank you, UNESCO, thank you, jury, and also His Excellencies who are present over here. National Institute of Open Schooling is the world's largest open schooling system, and I belong to the country, India, which has grand belief in non-violence, peace, justice, and the ancient Indian literature. The Ayurveda also talks about inclusion, medical science, and we are taking the legacy further of our ancient Indian teachings. As far as National Institute of Open Schooling is concerned, we are working in the ambit of Millennium 2030 goals, and also India has recently launched, Ministry of Education has recently launched National Education Policy 2020. And inclusion is an important part of this policy. So National Institute of Open Schooling has taken the legacy further in the field of inclusion. We are working, and I would like to present on the forum the brief sketch whatever initiatives we have taken. In a developing country like India, which has 1/6 of world's population and encompasses about 1.34 billion people, sustainable development is inevitable for ensuring a safe and inclusive society. NIOS is in the way of policy and recommendation on learners with disabilities. Policy on inclusive education is also being finalized soon, and it aims to create a barrier-free, learning-friendly environment to promote more participation of excluded pupils with disadvantaged group. Freedom and assistance of learner is our area, and we are giving our students to choose subjects freely, continuous assessment through tutor mark assignments, and facility of online registration for admission and examination credit accumulation facility. The study material and content development are accessible for disabled students, and NIOS is working on ISL, that is Indian Sign Language, where contents for assistance of deaf and hard of hearing learners. NIOS is working on talking books, contents, and learners with blindness and low vision. Proactive measures such as introduction of large audio books and printed books have significantly improved the education of students with disabilities. NIOS is offering Indian Sign Language as first language subject. In India, student can choose sign language like any other subject like English, Hindi, and any other subject. NIOS has taken different provisions for inclusive examination for learners with disabilities. All learners with disabilities are allowed to use scribe reader lab assistance. Learners can avail compensatory time. Learners can use assistive devices like talking calculator, Taylor frame, braille, abacus, geometry grid, braille measuring tape, etc. And we are using ICT in a more appropriate way. And NIOS delivers 1 hour live telecast in Indian Sign Language twice a week on our PM eVidya TV channel, and our it is in the name of our Prime Minister. So this channel telecast every 1 hour, every twice a week. And also sign language contents and talking books are available on Diksha portal, that is Government Ministry of Education portal, where students can access the material which is there in sign language, as well as various assistive books are there. So the way forward, this kind of prizes, these kind of awards give us encouragement, and thank you UNESCO for recognizing our efforts. So miles again we have to go, and the way forward which NIOS sees, NIOS is continuously working to promote inclusive education as per the guidelines and recommendation of National Education Policy. Development of subject-specific terminology, technical dictionaries in Indian Sign Languages shall also be developed. And also we are working on e-assessment for deaf and hard of hearing learners and learners with blindness and low vision are proposed. These kind of awards, these kind of encouragements, I assure UNESCO and all the dignitaries present over here, all the listeners, that NIS will continue doing good work for the sake of society as we consider education in the service sector. We will serve the sector, we will serve our nation, we will serve the world, and definitely we will achieve the Millennium 2030 goals of UNESCO. Thank you very much. Warm greetings. Namaskar.
Namaskar. Thank you very much for joining us, and congratulations again to the National Institute of Open Schooling in India.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Dear colleagues, the third laureates who was awarded the King Sejong Prize this year is the Puku Children's Literature Foundation from South Africa. It's represented by its executive director, Ms. Elinor Sisulu. Mrs. Elinor, welcome to our session. The floor is yours.
Thank you and good afternoon to all dignitaries present, especially Ambassador Kim Dong of the Republic of Korea. It's an enormous honor and privilege to receive this prestigious accolade. When hearing the news, one of our independent contractors commented, I quote, "I'm glad that someone appreciates the groundbreaking nature of the work we have done." So I thank the adjudication panel for this award and congratulate our fellow laureates. It's an honor to be in their company. The Puku Children's Literature Foundation is a reading promotion and book development organization that aims to create systemic change in South Africa's book development and reading ecosystem through digital platforms that provide a structured and organized system for selecting, reviewing, and sharing accurate data on children's books. The COVID-19 pandemic highlighted more than ever the need for our children to become independent readers and to have access to reading resources in their own languages. As the pandemic forced increased uptake of remote learning across multiple platforms, our task of producing enduring and memorable content in all our languages became increasingly urgent. In March 2021, Puku was fortunate to receive a grant from the Presidential Employment Stimulus Program administered by the National Arts Council. And here I must acknowledge the Presidency of South Africa for making this stimulus award to the arts sector available. This grant to preserve and promote indigenous languages enabled us to add to Puku's skeletal staff a talented team of independent contractors who worked diligently to meet our targets, despite the unprecedented scale of illness and bereavement that we have been experiencing as a result of the pandemic. Within the space of months, Puku spearheaded the publication of the first ever book in the Ngu language, a substantive contribution to the struggle of Katrina Iso, the last fluent speaker of Ngu, to ensure the survival of her language. We also made substantive progress in putting together a catalogue of isiXhosa books, the first in a series of catalogues of indigenous language books for early childhood. We created the first ever online video course on reviewing books in an indigenous language, and we seized the opportunity of increased uptake in virtual communication to promote multisexual conversations within and between linguistic communities. Influenced by the creative coalition model of the International Human Rights Organization Crisis Action, Puku has worked to build coalitions to promote literacy in indigenous language. This award is therefore not ours alone. We must take this opportunity to acknowledge and thank our partners who played a crucial role in the implementation of the project. These include the Pan-South African Language Board of South Africa, the Universities of South Africa, UNISA, University of Western Cape, University of Sol Plaatje University, the National Library of South Africa, Ilifa Lethu Institution, the International Board for Books for Young People, EBSA, and Biblionef, We are also deeply grateful to the Northern Cape Provincial Government, the National Heritage Council, and the Swiss Embassy of South Africa for partnering with us on the new language project, and to Naspers, a South African company, for providing financial support for our operations. We also pay homage to Oma Katrina Iso for her inspiring struggle for the survival of the new language. It has been an honor to work with her and her family. The work that I've outlined above shows that we have artistic and linguistic communities that are capable of producing amazing content with creative coalitions for impact, matched with adequate investment, ensuring equal access to digital resources. The sky is the limit. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Executive Director, Ms. Eleanor Sisulu, and congratulations again to the Foundation for the prize. Ladies and gentlemen, as we mentioned in the beginning, we are also celebrating a very important literacy prize, the Confucius Literacy Prize. The prize was established in 2005 in honor of the prominent Chinese philosopher, which recognizes the three laureates and gives special consideration to functional literacy, leveraging technological environments in support of adult and rural areas and out-of-school youth. Let me first of all give the floor to His Excellency Ambassador and Permanent Delegate of the People's Republic of China, Mr. Jin Yang. Ni hao, Ambassador, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Dear EDG Jianini, His Excellency Ambassador Ki Dongqi, the Republic of Korea, distinguished representatives of international jewelry, Excellencies, laureates of the 2021 International Literacy Prizes, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon to you all from Paris. It is a great pleasure for me to join you in celebrating the 2021 International Literacy Day, themed on the literacy for human-centered recovery, narrowing the digital divide. First of all, allow me to extend my warmest congratulations to all the winners of the 2021 UNESCO International Literacy Prizes. I'm very happy to see that the program building and growing in Mexico, the Anshan University experience in organizing online literacy classes for rural areas in Egypt, and the functional literacy for traders in Abidjan through the use of RCT in Ivory Coast, win the 2021 edition of the UNESCO Confucius Prize for Literacy. I believe that your experiences not only demonstrate your commitments to empower the people with education in your country, but also serve as good examples for others to bring better education and livelihood to all the people. Congratulations for your marvelous work. Literacy is a starting point and the foundation of a person to enjoy the right to education. The importance of literacy has been reiterated time and again in the international agenda, among them most prominently the current Sustainable Development Goals, SDG 4.6, which require to ensure by 2030 that all youth and a substantial proportion of adults, both men and women, achieving literacy and numeracy. Although significant progress has been made in achieving SDG 4 in the international community, globally, as highlighted by EDG Giannini, at least 773 million youth and adults still cannot read and write, and 250 million children are failing to acquire basic literacy skills, which results in an exclusion of low literacy and low skilled youth and adults from full participation in their communities and societies. The prolonged pandemic made the situation even severe. This all tells us that if we do not redouble our efforts to advance literacy using all possible tools rounded by new technology, we will not be on track to achieve SDG 4 by 2030. Confucius, the ancient Chinese educationist and philosopher who lived in 500 years BC, believed that there should be education for everyone without distinguishing. In China, education has always been the priority in the national development strategy. Through years of arduous and sustained efforts, China achieved comprehensive elimination of youth and adult illiteracy throughout the country in 2011. In order to support the literacy efforts worldwide and reward the outstanding efforts of individuals, institutions, organizations, or other entities engaged in activities on literacy, serving rural adults and out-of-school youth, especially in the developing countries, China, in collaboration with UNESCO, established the Confucius Prize for Literacy in 2005. I would like to take this opportunity to thank UNESCO for its strong support to this prize and its continued efforts in literacy development and promoting the Education 2030 agenda. It is our sincere hope that the prize will continue to contribute to the literacy endeavor around the world. I assure you of China's continued commitment to supporting UNESCO's effort in achieving the SDG 4 goal and strengthening collaboration with member states of UNESCO for an early recovery from the pandemic and to build a resilient education system for the future. I thank you all.
Cher Ambassador, merci beaucoup pour votre...
Thank you very much for your presentation and your remarks. And we'd like to thank you once again for your support of this literacy program in UNESCO, because that's the support that means that we can implement these programs taking us forward towards SDG 4, as you said. So we are now going to hear from the 3 laureates of the program, the Confucius program for this year. So we will start with JTIC, Côte d'Ivoire ONG, presented by Mr. Gru, the president of the association. You have the floor, sir.
Bonjour, Monsieur le Président.
Good morning, good afternoon. President, you have the floor. Thank you very much. All protocols observed, dear everyone. It's a great pleasure for me to be here. But before I start, let me express my deepest gratitude to all those who have supported our ONG in their struggle to win this prize. In particular, there's the UNESCO field office in Abidjan, under Mrs. Riz, the Minister in charge of National Education and Literacy in Côte d'Ivoire, under Professor Ayadouni, along with all the technical staff who have continued providing their support and have their expertise. All the workers in the GATIC NGO, thank you. This is about using ITC, created back in 2017, following the functional literacy program for traders that was set up by this organization. Then the ONG continued to work for literacy across various communities in Abidjan, extending into the rural areas. The NGO was involved in literacy programs for traders and other socioeconomic categories in Abidjan, 95% of which are women. It was about providing them with smartphones so that they could read and do arithmetic both in presencia and remotely. It taught them to manage their businesses more efficiently at national level. We hope that this award will mean that we will get further technical support from UNESCO and also from the Côte d'Ivoire National Commission to UNESCO, so that we can run this program across all the areas of Côte d'Ivoire where there is a need. Also, in domestic terms, we are more than willing to work with technical and financial high-level partners so that we can implement development programs through ITC-based literary programs. So with this award, we can reassure you that this is further incentive for GATIC to continue working towards literacy programs for our country and for the region and for the continent. We express our deepest gratitude to you for the award, and we continue to work with you. Thank you very much, President, and congratulations once again to GATIC, your organization. It's an award which recognizes your devotion and commitment to all the work you've done. Thank you. So we move on from Côte d'Ivoire to Egypt now.
Welcome, Professor Mahmoud Al-Mitaini. Professor, congratulations to Ain Shams University. We are very pleased to see that university has been engaging in such a very inspiring and important program. The floor is yours. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum. Bonjour from Cairo, Egypt. I would like to express my sincere appreciation and thanks to the UNESCO team for offering Ain Shams University and me this landmark opportunity to celebrate with you today the International Literacy Day, and at the same time witnessing Ain Shams University as the national winner for the UNESCO 2021 Confucius Prize for Literacy. And I grab this opportunity to extend my thanks also to the international jury and to His Excellency, Mr. Jin Yang, the Ambassador of the People's Republic of China, for offering this prize. In Egypt, illiteracy has been always a concern during the past decades that several plans has been followed, with the most serious one, what has started 2 years ago, aiming at a zero illiteracy within a given time frame. Our winning project today provided an ambitious plan for the most underserved regions by engaging our university students to serve as literacy teachers by building their capacities through different methods under close follow-up of Ain Shams University faculty members. TOTs for the teachers was integral in this project by a series of online courses that led them not only to master teaching for the illiterate, but also to innovate various methods for communication and interaction with the learners, promote the use of technology in teaching, and implement a wide array of activities in classrooms based on discussion and workshops to motivate the learners to share their knowledge, whatever simple it is. The Public Authority for Adult Education, our strategic partner, provided us with the different learning materials as educational videos, CDs, and samples of digital literacy tests for reading and basic mathematics. Meanwhile, we created together a YouTube channel dedicated to support the learning process. Given the current COVID-19 crisis, we started using different educational platforms for both the teachers to provide the ongoing necessary training, as well as for the learning process in a hybrid manner for the marginalized environment with weak internet services. Obviously, the challenges were the lack of adequate technological infrastructure for many illiterates to access the service and conducting the sound assessment methods in these circumstances. However, our university students in these areas communicated well with their families, relatives, and neighbors to deliver all possible educational materials, given it books, videos, and test exercises through Bluetooth and/or CDs. Adult and lifelong learning are currently expanding with a wider participation of ASU faculty, employee, and students capable of getting engaged in this motivational patriotic project. In parallel, Ain Shams University provides a continuum of educational convoys to the most disadvantaged regions in the country. Finally, I would like to confirm that the current experience has taught us that despite the difficulties and challenges of using technology for adult distance learning, the opportunities are still encouraging and timing is more timely than ever. No matter how difficult the endeavors are, they are still possible. I would like to end by thank you all and thank the UNESCO team, and merci beaucoup.
Shukran, Professor. Thank you very much, Professor, for these words, and congratulations again to Ain Shams University for the prize and for all the work that has been conducted this year and in the previous years. Dear colleagues, we have to cross the Atlantics now, and I'm very pleased to introduce our third laureate, President Executive of Construyendo y Creciendo, Ms. Roxana Fabris Lopez Pina. Presidente, buenos días.
Good morning. President, you have the floor.
John Bestman, Chair of the Jury, and the other 5 winners of the Literacy Prize 2021. Today is a special and important day. The significance of education and the right to literacy occupied a place at the center of the world agenda. More than 700 million adults and young people in the world lack the basic skills to read and write. And pandemic effects on education and lag will be devastating if we do not work to avoid it. That is why I'm proud to participate in this session that celebrates Literacy Day and the delivery of the Confucius and King Sejong Awards, and to be the voice of a group that is not very visible in our society, despite being an essential part of building a better world. I am talking about construction workers who build the spaces in which we live, work, and move, and who have had few development opportunities in Mexico. Although the literacy rate in our country has dropped significantly in the recent decades, standing at 4.7%, among construction workers, the rate is close to 10%. Thanks to the work of Construyendo y Creciendo, this journeyman can have greater opportunities for development through education. 15 years ago, Pepe Chabot founded Construyendo y Creciendo when working on a construction site, and identified that many of his fellow masons did not know how to read and write, and therefore were subject to abuse and harassment. Thus, it began the path to consolidate an organization that has now offered education to more than 27,000 laborers in dozens of classrooms installed within construction sites. Through academic and personal development, as well as work-related training, our program tackles economic, social, and psychological barriers to education and provide crucial digital skills. An innovative model that in the face of the pandemic has had to reinvent itself because of the suspension of face-to-face activities, which seemed essential to offer education to vulnerable groups. As a response, we immediately developed a distant education model, which, recognizing the limitation for our students and their limited access to technology, took advantage of their main resource, the desire to learn. This model brought advantages, such as 24-hour educational services for people who had low access to the internet and illiterate adults, Construyendo y Creciendo opted to distribute educational material in physical form and maintain communication with them by telephone or through a family member. Today, distant education is already a fixed model in our program, which is added to the face-to-face modality. I want to give a great recognition to all of our allies, builders, donors, the National Institute for Adult Education, INEA, that certifies our programs, and especially the team in Construyendo y Creciendo, more than 60 professionals from all fields, including 30 educational advisors led by Cecilia Galicia. Y un reconocimiento especial a nuestros estudiantes.
And an acknowledgement to our students, some of whom are with us today, for this personal and the development that will turn them into an agent of change.
From UNESCO, with the commitment to continue working to bring educational opportunities to those who do not have access to them, with the conviction that education is the most powerful weapon to change the world, and with the clarity that align with the Sustainable Development Goals, we will promote equity, access to quality education, economic development, and the reduction of disparities, so that, in effect, no one is left behind. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, Presidente, and
Thank you very much, President, and congratulations.
colleagues. We have got a very important presentation from the different laureates, and we have seen how much is important to continue acting to increase the literacy level everywhere. We have seen that the technology is impacting the way we live, we learn, and the way we engage, and it's also impacting literacy in different manners. Our discussion yesterday already engaged with this topic, but we have heard today from the practices from the ground, and we have seen how much it's important to recognize the work of different organizations, from public organization to NGOs, to universities, to private sector. And it's important to recognize that this is a multi-stakeholder collaboration. Let me thank again Ambassadors Yang Jin and Ambassador Kim Dongji for their participation and for honoring us with their presence today. Let me thank again Mr. John Binsman, the chair of the jury, for his participation as well. I would like to thank all the laureates and congratulate them for the prizes. I would like to thank the 300 participants who joined us today to hear about the prizes, to listen to the laureates, and also to engage with us. We are not ending our discussion now. We have an important session going forward, which will be looking not only at the past and what was literacy, how we have been engaging with literacy, also look at the future, how we should engage with literacy in increasingly digitized world, in a world where the skills for digital engagement is also critical, and how we look at literacy in this broader perspective. So we have a session that that will be moderated by Mr. Peter Mayo, who is the professor from Department Open Communities, Adult Education, Faculty of Education, University of Malta. Is also UNESCO chair, and we are very pleased to have Professor Peter Mayo with us today. Professor, I hand over to you the floor, and I give you the opportunity to introduce the session and our speakers, our eminent speakers today. Over to you, Professor.
Thank you, Borges. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm just requesting that the camera is allowed to be on, because I've been switched off.
Let us try to fix this problem. I'm sure my colleagues will handle that, Professor.
Yes, okay, you can see me. Okay, greetings from the island of Malta. Our session, our third session, is going to make us become a bit visionary hopefully with our feet firmly on the ground, because we have always to look ahead, but keep, as Paulo Freire would say, we have to root our vision in our present situation and our present existential situation of COVID, situation of large swathes of the world still lacking basic literacy or even post-literacy, because you need an environment which is literacy conducive for whatever literacy you gain to remain sustainable. And I think this is a big issue in many parts of the world. But we are going to look to the future. The session is titled Reimagining Future Literacy Teaching and Learning, How Technology Will Impact Literacy Programs. And for this, and I'm also conscious of the time, we have a couple of questions, and I'm sure our speakers today, who I will present shortly, will address them. There are two key questions. The first of which is, what are the potential and challenges, let's say, or issues as it's written down, of distance and technology enhanced literacy programs and learning in times of COVID and beyond? Last 2 years have made us reflect a lot about COVID, about the digital divide. Has it been even broadened because of the COVID, the pandemic, or has it given us new and innovative ways of dealing with this literacy divide? Also, and the second and the related question is, how would scientific and technological development impact the way in which future literacy provision and literacy teaching and learning are organized? So we have a panel, and I'm going to be strict. I believe I was told to stick to 5 minutes each. Is that all right? I'm asking the conveners whether 5 minutes is okay. First of all, I would like to thank the conveners of this conference and UNESCO for marking this important day, Literacy Day, with this conference. We have an interesting range of speakers, representative from the youth sector. We also have representative of social difference in terms of different kind of, social diversity, social difference. We have a representative from the University of California at Los Angeles. We have also the Director of Educational Skills, Special Advisor on Education Policy to the Secretary General from the OECD, the Organization of Economic Development. And of course, we also have a director from UNESCO itself of the Future of Learning and Innovation team. So without further ado, and I will ask that the speakers observe the 5 minute period. I will invite Ms. Amna Habiba, representative of UNESCO Youth Community, to share the screen with us.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Peter. Hello, everyone. I am Amna Habiba from Pakistan, and thanks to the power of technology, today I am here connected to you all to celebrate a very important day, which is the International Literacy Day. For me, as a young girl from a developing country in South Asia, technology played a vital role in accessing learning and development opportunities during the pandemic, which otherwise would have been inaccessible to me. Being digitally literate was an important skill that, when used the right way, opened multiple gateways, leading to me finding my inner potential and be equipped with the latest skills of the century. However, with today's changing times, existing methods of teaching and learning are becoming quite old-fashioned, and the need for harnessing technology is required to equip every person with today's literacy skills. For the past 18 months, it has been very difficult to gain access to hands-on and practical training environments due to physical limitations. And with every person having unique and diverse personas, normal training and learning methods do not properly cater to them. In addition to that, the digital divide in many developing countries keeps on increasing due to a wide array of factors, and COVID-19 being one of them, a very big factor that leads to the digital divide. So how can we use technology to solve these problems and many more? Well, with multiple advancements being made into technology, AI being on the rise, the future promises us a lot. VR experiences that mimic hands-on trainings, gamified and personalized learning platforms and content, but most of all, free and accessible to all learning opportunities that pave the pathway to economic empowerment among developing countries. With the pandemic, the shift to digital is more crucial than ever, and equipping people, especially young people, with the necessary skills to thrive in the digital world is important. We all can play a part in changing the landscape of learning and teaching by harnessing tech for good and supporting initiatives that promise technological empowerment. I thank the UNESCO team for giving me the opportunity to represent the UNESCO for Youth community and sharing my thoughts on the future of technology for teaching and learning. Thank you, Mr. Peter.
Well, thank you very much, Ms. Habiba, and thanks for sticking to sticking exactly to the time. Probably you finished actually earlier, and hope we have more time for discussion eventually. Yes, the pandemic, those who are fortunate enough to be able to navigate the digital world could continue with their education, others not so. And this is where, social difference comes in, because of course, it often implies access to resources. When you have lockdowns and people are not allowed to go to school because of lockdowns or all kinds of things, the rate of attrition often increases. So you cannot talk about literacy and not talk about structural indifference, structural indifference, which actually leads me to the second speaker, because I can see from her background, is that she comes from a Center for Dyslexia, Diverse Learners, and Social Justice at UCLA, from the Graduate School of Education and Information Studies. So I call upon Marianne Wolf. I don't know what's going to be the main theme of your speech, but from your background, obviously difference will come into it. So I ask Ms. Marianne Wolf to share the screen with us. Ms. Wolf from the United States.
I'm hoping that you can hear me.
Yes, I can.
I can. Video? It says unable to start video, so I think someone has to release me.
Yeah.
Can they do that? Can they release me? Start video?
We need the technical people to unmute.
They have to start my video.
Yeah.
Can they do that?
Hello. I'm asking the technical people to intervene so that we can see the speaker, Marianne Wolf.
Here, wonderful. Greetings to all of you, Professor Mayo, to all of you who are participants, and very importantly, I wish to congratulate all the laureates who have won the King Sejong and Confucius Prizes. This is very, very wonderful and extraordinary work. I am going to be giving you a very different view of literacy from the standpoint of neuroscience. I'm going to be giving you 3 insights into literacy and the reading brain, with the hope that the knowledge of differences that we have in our different mediums will help us go forward to the future with a more, if you will, demystified view of digital reading and an enhanced view of what literacy in the future can be like. And my first insight is very simple, and that is that unlike what many of us have come to think about as literacy being a natural process, we were never meant to read. There's no genetic program like language or vision and cognition. Rather, the human brain's design principles allow us to make a whole new circuit. But there's a catch to this circuit, and it's a beautiful one. It has an Achilles heel and it has Achilles strength, and that is that it is plastic. And this means that we can learn all kinds of different writing systems, but each writing system is reflected in slightly different regions of the brain. Now, this plasticity allows us to move from a very basic circuit like a child uses to this extraordinary expanded reading circuit that all of us want, not only for our present generation, but for our future. Because literacy literally changes the brain of an individual, which changes their life trajectory, which changes society, which in fact changes our species. That, in essence, that makes us even more, if you will, required to understand how different are generations of children and human beings who are analytic, who are critical, who are not vulnerable to the kinds of demagoguery that can happen with the surface processing of information, and who are capable of the highest forms of thought for our increasingly connected world. So my true hope is that we preserve and expand that reading brain. Thank you.
You're on mute, Peter.
Professor, you are muted.
No, I'm not. Now, okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Wolf from UCLA, for this very impassioned plea about the future of literacy, a bilateral process, being biliterate, as the way you put it, in terms of both breadth and depth, that we don't get carried away only with the digital thing and forget the depth kind of reading, which is reading not just the word, but also the world, in other words, being critical. And don't we need this in this world of what is often referred to as the post-truth society, which I don't know if there was truth, but you know, that kind of word. And a lot is being written now on this because there seems to be a democratic deficit in this regard, in terms of the way people are becoming gullible and are really buying into the fake news and all kinds of things which come. Yeah, and this leads me now to Mr. Andreas Schleyer from the OECD, Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development, who is going to speak to, and he's a Director of Education and Skills and Special Advisor on Educational Policy to the Secretary General. Mr. Schleyer, I don't know, you have the screen.
Thank you so much, and my congratulations to the laureates, and my deep thanks to UNESCO actually for highlighting the crucial importance of literacy, which is the foundation, you know, of a functioning society and community. I want to share a couple of slides with you. I hope you can. No, I think you cannot. Yeah. You can see them.
Yeah, we do.
Good. Yes, and basically, you know, I wanted to show how the concept of literacy has evolved. You know, in the year 2000, literacy was mainly about reading printed text. When you didn't know the answer to a question, you could look it up in an encyclopedia. You could trust that answer to be true. But meanwhile, we have seen technology fundamentally changing the way in which we engage with information. You know, 2007, the iPhone came into play. Then 2009, social media took a completely different role to communicate, and now more lately, cloud computing, artificial intelligence, fundamentally engaging with the information now. These days, when you have a question, you look it up on Google or Baidu, and nobody tells you whether the answer you find there is right or wrong, true or false. But in this context, when we measure literacy skills in the wealthiest countries of the world, the OECD countries, we see that the line has been absolutely flat. The context has changed, the demands for people has changed, but actually the capacities are more or less the same. Our school systems have not woken up to that new reality. And Peter, you just highlighted fake news. Now, I can put a number to this. We have less than half of 15-year-olds in the wealthiest countries that are able to distinguish fact from opinion in quite simple text. I'm not talking about very complicated things. The good news is that we can change this. When you look, for example, the capacity of students to distinguish, to navigate ambiguity, distinguish fact from opinion, the data show clearly where students were actually taught actively by their teachers to decide whether to trust information, they did better on this. So we can teach those critical thinking skills, where they were taught how to compare the different web pages and decide what information is more relevant, they were better in navigating ambiguity, where they were taught how to understand the consequences of making information publicly available, that helped them. And most importantly, where they were taught how to detect whether information is subjective, young people at age 15 could navigate that complexity. So this is something we need to bring those new literacy skills more into the instructional context. And that brings me to the drivers of this. Obviously, technology. Young people are digital natives. Now you can see very clearly is that the digital world has become the real world. You can see if you look on the left side, Denmark and Sweden, students spending, more than 40, almost 50 hours per week online. That's more than many people spend at their workplace. The digital world has become the real world. But being a digital native doesn't mean that you're digitally skilled. In fact, when we assess the capacity of young people to actively navigate the internet, search information, critique, compare, analyze information, you could see some countries on the left, and they're all in East Asia. Now you look at Singapore, you look at Korea, parts of China, and Japan, the UK and US come afterwards. And many countries in Europe, you have to go pretty far to the right, and then the developing world even further. The reality is that many students, and in some cases the majority, do not have the navigation skills. They can use their mobile phone, they can use the technology, but they cannot use sort of the digital world to actually actively engage in reading. And that brings me also, Peter, you mentioned that point of the digital divide. That is very, very real. Fortunately, we have seen a lot of progress in closing the digital divide. You have some countries here like Iceland or Korea that always did very well. They are the star performers. Young people always had access to technology at home to do their homework. There are some countries like the United States that did but continue to do well. But actually, there are some other countries. If you look here at Latvia, the Russian Federation, the Slovak Republic, in 2003. They were at the bottom of the league. Now they're together with other countries at the frontier. So, I think this is something that we should look at with encouragement. We are seeing progress towards closing the digital divide in many countries, not everywhere, but in many countries. But there's something that we lose sight of. And I want to highlight this because Marianne just made that point. And that is, the traditional literacy work. When you actually see on the one hand, you can say among privileged students, access to cultural capital, to books, to printed material has remained at least stable. But, in contrast to the digital access, the access for disadvantaged students has got a lot worse. Young people from disadvantaged backgrounds used to have more access to printed material, traditional material, and things have got worse. So we are closing the digital divide, but actually we're opening up a divide in access to traditional reading material. Why do I say this? And again, that was the point that Marianne made for a neuroscience point of view. I make it here from an empirical education view. We actually see that where students read more in paper format or at least in mixed format, they tend to be more enjoyable of reading. They tend to engage more in reading. They read more deeply. It's very clearly come out of the data. And again, you know, reading more deeply means engaging with knowledge. And it's also making it a habit throughout our lives, because one thing is clear. No school, not even the best school system, can equip people with the digital skills, the reading skills they need for their lives. People need to continue to learn throughout their lives, to use the new technologies to develop new reading skills as they progress. And this only is going to work with the kind of motivation and enjoyment that people find for themselves. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. You've touched on, Andreas, you've touched on several interesting points. Of course, the other thing is we have to, and I think you hinted at it, we have a copy of a particular reality because of the digital world. And the important thing of deep thinking and deep reading, of engaging, is to ask a very important question, is who is defining the copy of the reality to us? Simulacra is the word, which is used a lot, which is a copy of something else. And we live in this world of copies, and that makes it it makes the issue more political. In the sense, we have to ask the question, who is designing? There's a whole debate about coding about this. I don't want to detain because of the time factor. Finally, a person who's become very familiar to me in recent years in recent months because of the UNESCO chair. Ms. Solbi Tawil, Director of Future of Learning and Innovation Team, UNESCO. Mr. Tawil, the screen is yours.
Thank you very much, Peter, and greetings to the panelists and to all the participants. I'll come into this from the perspective of an intergovernmental organization with the diversity of context that we have. Note that I refer to the future in the plural, much like UNESCO's initiative on the futures of education. The plural signals not only probable and likely futures, but also possible and alternative futures. And while we have the same compass as we look to the future, we're not bound by any one destination or one future. And by compass, I mean, we do have our shared goals and commitments relative to universal literacy, commitments to the right to education from the Universal Declaration on Human Rights to the Education for All movement, and more recently the 2030 agenda. But these shared principles translate differently in a variety of organizational educational opportunities. So just as there are many numerous possible futures, there are also multiple presents. And I think we need to consider that when we're looking at the literacy in particular, we face really a dual challenge. We could say we have one foot in the past and one foot in the future. And the foot in the past is the challenge of our unfulfilled promises, the continued denial of the right to literacy and the right to education to many. It's true that in looking at history, if we look at the longer term, the 150 years, or even the past 50 years, we have gone in many instances from majority non-literate societies to majority literate societies. In the past 30 years, we've seen much improvement in youth and adult literacy. I mean, as a consequence of expanded educational opportunity, youth literacy rates around the world lower in lower middle income countries. Middle income countries are converging with those that we see in upper middle income countries, 90% and more. There's been significant improvements in reducing the gender gap. But these are global figures, as we know. These are global trends. And despite the progress over the decades, we know that there are still challenges in access to quality education, incomplete and inequitable access, and exclusion from educational opportunity remains stark for those who are the most marginalized. So even by conventional definitions and measures of basic literacy, in lower middle income countries where adult literacy rates of 75%, and this is using really traditional measures and estimates. In lower income countries, just over 55% of adults are considered literate, 2 out of 5 women non-literate, 1 in 4 youth in lower income countries not literate today, right, 2020-21. So that is, even and we've heard some of that from Andreas Strasser, even in middle income and upper income countries, leave the more sophisticated skills, the navigation skills and information processing skills. PISA has shown that substantive shares of 15-year-olds in school are actually unable to understand and read beyond most basic levels, and definitely not at the levels required for the types of demands, social, civic, political, economic demands of participation that we have today. That's the one foot in the past. The foot in the future is expanding our understanding of literacy. And that's not new. We know that. The challenge is not new of expanding our understanding of literacy. It's become more obvious with the digital transformation of our societies, of all aspects of our lives and the way we socialize and access information and study and learn and work and do business and mobilize politically. And it has obviously accelerated in the last few years to the point that digital literacy is to be considered one of the essential literacies today and in the future. And the disruption, the social, economic, educational disruption of COVID has only highlighted this awareness. But expanding, and we've heard a little bit of this, expanding our understanding of literacy is that literacy is not only the way it was defined 30 years ago with the Education for All movement as an instrumental, a tool for learning to learn. That is important, but it's no longer just about learning to learn. It's also seeing literacy more than a learning tool, and it must build our capacity to unlearn some of our beliefs, some of our assumptions, some of our ways of thinking that actually perpetuate on the social dimension, discrimination, exclusion, and on the sustainability front, unsustainable lifestyles. So as the foundation of education literacy is not only about adapting to the changing world, but it's also about transforming and helping to transform that future. So traditional literacy, digital literacy, learning to learn are required, but no longer enough to ensure that the educational experience is a transformative one. And we need to unlearn the mindsets, the attitudes, the behaviors that are often obstacles to futures which are more socially just and environmentally sustainable. To recall and to end on that with what the framing that the International Commission on the Futures of Education is currently proposing, and they'll be releasing their report later this year in November, that we do need to renew and build a new social contract for education. So to revisit our understandings and our commitments around literacy and around education. It means renewing our understandings of literacy, that while literacy remains essential for learning to learn, it must necessarily help us to unlearn and to contribute to shaping and transforming the future. That digital literacy must be seen as an integral part of the right to education. And
thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Tawil. I would like to, interesting what you said, especially about what is literacy today, and what are, as Richard Hogarth once wrote, the uses of literacy. We asked that question today. What does it mean for people who are living in rural areas? people who don't want the kind of literacy that we promote often, which is often the industrialized world or post-industrial world's kind of literacy, which is a form, and people resist it because they have their own literacies. And so, you know, this opens a Pandora box of issues in this regard. And, you know, my contention is always that, this is my own personal feeling, that, you know, literacy also, you cannot see literacy in a vacuum. That's the most important thing. Literacy is connected with so many things. It's connected with issues of difference. It's connected with indigeneity, with ethnicities. It's connected with also the way we organize our production and our life. Mm-hmm. The way, you know, today, confronted by agro-business, what does it mean to be a farmer? And what does it mean, therefore, to cooperate with others? In the past, we spoke about cooperatives. Right? Maybe in the future, there's some other new kind of utopia or a set of heterotopias which promote a different way of organizing cooperatively work, and therefore, what is the use of literacy within that context? So anyway, but that is. Do we have enough time for a discussion?
Yes, we do. Please go ahead.
So anybody, okay, I've made my point about what is the bee in my bonnet with regard to creating a context for literacy and what does it mean to have literacy amongst indigenous groups who probably wanted to resist the Western literacy in the first place because it meant unwriting their own kind of literacy. So we have to ask questions about the uses of literacy, the dimensions of literacy, which were raised in the last intervention, etc. So anybody who would like to intervene and contribute to this discussion. What are the issues that we're going to face, the challenges we are facing now, but particularly also with a view to the future in terms of literacy? I mean, do we just take on board technology enhanced learning as it is without raising questions about it? You know, I mean, what shape should that take in terms also of what I would call a genuine democracy? Mm-hmm. These are some of the issues we could be facing in future. We already face them now. What about, let's not forget also critical literacy, which is often the major casualty. Mm-hmm. You know, we talk about functional literacy, we talk about cultural literacy at one stage, you know, especially in the United States, E.D. Hirsch and Alan Bloom, just to leave out others. This is the kind of knowledge you need. Critical literacy, which is where I actually work a lot in, but the one which is often, yeah, we need critical literacy, but let's go on with what we're doing, you know? They give it lip service. So this is
Professor, excuse me, there are also a few questions that are asked by the participants to the speakers. You may want to pick up some of the question while, of course, offering colleagues, Andreas, Marianne, Sobhi, the opportunity as well to intervene on those broader questions. Over to you. You are muted, Professor. You are muted.
So, I think I would like to both address the question that was asked of me, but also to continue Professor Mayo's comments about critical literacy. I use the term deep reading to give a view of what I most worry about in any medium, and that is that we can, because of the vast amount of information, have a mode of reading that's very surface, very superficial. We're going so quickly that though we get the level of information that confirms our own biases, and here I think Dr. Tavil's concept of unlearning, I think we are in fact with digital technologies actually enhancing prejudice because we're going to only those silos of information that confirm what we thought. So a very important point I think that we all need to address is how do we ensure the use of deep reading skills across any medium? How do we teach that? And I think, Professor Schleicher, you were really moving into that we can teach digital literacy. But my suggestion is that, and this addresses the teachers have a new role, I believe, in understanding how important it is for their students not only to be digitally adept, but to be critical, empathic thinkers. And the one dimension, I'll do that very, very quickly, the one dimension that is so infrequently understood in literacy is, and that's again Professor Tamil's point, is the use of empathy, the passing over from our viewpoint to understand other perspectives. And so critical analysis, empathy, and reflection are what we must have regardless of what we call literacy. Those component parts, it seems to me, are essential for educators to bear in mind as we teach our children.
Yeah, Marianne, I think you highlight a really important point. It is not so much about, the amount of time that we devote to teaching, but the approach we do. I mean, we teach literacy often as a tool to sort of reproduce the wisdom of our times. We make people believe things that they read. We do not teach people to question the established wisdom of our times, really to think more deeply, to contrast, critique, compare. And that is what makes us then vulnerable to this kind of echo chambers of people who think like you, look like you, walk like you. But I do believe the answer is actually closer than we think, and technology can actually be more a distractor than actually an enabler of those kinds of literacy skills. They are about the way we use our language, not about the medium. And the medium often, at least I think in the digital world, gets into the way. Twitter says you can only use 100 or 280 characters. That is what the technology imposes on using written communication. I also think your point about the interaction between social skills and literacy is something that we often underestimate. I mean, much of social interaction today happens through the written word, and so I think people to properly decode information, I think we can and need to do a much better job on this. The first chart that I showed you, I think is really scary, that we have 20 years of evolution around us in the demands on people and no kind of change on the supply side. And that is, I have a lot of sympathy with countries, you have a very great difficulty running and operating their education systems. But I was talking about the countries that, have the money, the resources, and everything in place to do a better job.
Yeah, how to read also, let's go back to Chomsky's title with Herman. How also these technologies are used to manufacture consent. What we want is how can they critically manufacture dissent? So this, and we've seen populism, a kind of populism we've been faced with in many parts of Europe as well, not just the United States or other places, yeah.
Yeah, but most of the algorithms around digital text are designed to actually, confirm your views and your beliefs. That is not an artifact of, that is not, an accident. That is a kind of design feature of social media. But, young people who understand it can deal with this. Young people who do not will become a victim. You either, understand the algorithms or you become a victim of it.
Yeah, and we also, there's a very other important issue. Of course, we need some general literacies to communicate. That's with the standard language in the past, because we had different types. But we are also facing another very important issue. We've been discussing this for many years. I remember a conference in Reading about this. We are losing a lot of literacies. So when we talk about literacy, we should also talk about, listen, there are various forms of literacies. Some of them are an endangered species or possibly extinct as well. So that's a dimension towards the discussions about literacy that one has to bring into the equation. different groups have different literacies, and they die out. They die out because the context for the use of those literacies are diminishing. That's putting.
If I could, I just wanted to react to Marian in your presentation. I thought on the bilateral brain and the need to, the balance between the type of media and the type of literacy that involves, and between the print and the digital, the depth and the breadth, and interesting to connect with what you were saying, Andreas, also on the evolution of digital and non-digital divides. I thought that was extremely interesting to say that the cultural resources, the literate environment in the home is actually becoming more impoverished for some, while the digital divide is being closed. I think in COVID, we saw, with the school disruptions and largely when possible, to the extent possible, recourse to distance learning through digital. We've seen two efforts in terms of efforts towards, universal education on one hand, and on the other towards universal connectivity. They did intersect at times in the past, but they were forced together during the school closures. And initially, quite an optimistic discourse that this is the future. An education that is, and literacy development and education that is dependent and reliant on digital connectivity. And interesting, in some of the consultations we had around the futures of education, that we were hearing some voices for the right to non-connectivity in education. And as shocking as that sounded at the beginning, what they were actually saying is that the educational experience should not be reduced to what can happen through, or the spaces created through, the digital. And this ties in with some of what was being said about, not only the social and other skills and competencies that are developed in classrooms and schools and educational spaces through interaction, but also the idea that there are different critical literacies to be developed, and that should not be reliant on and dependent on digital technological support. And what you were saying, Andreas, on the last point, on the algorithms and the built-in bias, to Marianne as well, is taking critical media literacy to another level. Media literacy is not a new area, but these recent developments are definitely making making that a much more critical but also challenging area to develop a critical understanding and dealing with.
Yeah, Shobi, and just one reaction to this. I very much agree on the technology is defining the way in which we use literacy. It's absolutely clear. At the same time, we need to always be conscious that literacy is not a transactional process, but always a social, a relational one. And in fact, the two biggest predictors of reading outcomes on the PISA assessment were, parental reading to their children, whether parents actually read to their children. You cannot simulate this with, electronic books and DVDs and so on. It is the parents. And the second thing is teacher enthusiasm. Is actually, the fact whether young people perceive their teachers to be enthusiastic about, that process of literacy had a bigger impact than much of, the kind of written curriculum in this. And so I think we need to keep that in mind. If we want to develop 21st century literacy skills, we have to, create that student, engagement, that, intrinsic motivation, that willingness to learn and use literacy as a tool to sort of widen your horizon. And that's going to be very hard to emulate with any form of technology. I think technology can be, make learning more granular, more adaptive, more interactive, all of those things. But I don't think it's going to, crack that part of the process.
My apologies, but I've looked at my mobile to see the emails, which I obviously kind of I couldn't see before because I'm focusing on other things here. And I'm told to close the session at 15:25 Central European time, which is the time I'm on. Okay. So we'll have to end this conversation. I also noticed a few questions here. One addressed to the speakers. Maybe I can look up the emails and send them to you, because I only noticed them now because they were sent to me by email, and I am focusing on the chats and what you're saying, etc. So I will have to conclude the session. Time is of essence, and it was interesting. I think we broadened the discussion a lot about the future of literacy. Not that what we said is 100% new, because people have been saying these things, but they have to be re-emphasized. Also, if we are going to be more democratic, genuinely democratic, genuinely democratic and more grassroots oriented in future, in terms of this very, very fundamental issue of literacy. Literacy for what, for whom, who needs it in this particular context, etc. It is a politically loaded question. And of course, it is a site of contestation. Literacy, like education, like anything else, like culture, whatever, is always a site of contestation. So on that note, I thank our speakers. I thank everybody who's been involved. I thank the organizers from UNESCO for making this possible. And I've thoroughly enjoyed it personally. I hope you enjoy it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Mayo, and thanks to Andreas, Marianne, and Sophie for a very inspiring and very important discussion. And you opened for us new directions and new horizon for the work that we are doing in literacy. Let me, I will not try to synthesize all what we have been doing and discussing during the last 2 days. But I would like rather to recall some of the critical points of our discussion, and also open a bit for what we will be doing as UNESCO together with other partners in this area. First of all, maybe just to recall that we focused this year theme on the human-centric or human-centered recovery, with the role of course, of literacy. And I think it's very critical to recall why we selected the theme of human-centered. We think that it's very important that any effort of recovery, be it from an economic, social, and of course educational, has to be about the human rights, has to be about recognizing the right to education, and of course the right to lifelong learning, and the right to literacy as well. We started with facts, and we started with let me use and borrow from Andreas the term non-digital facts. We still have around 773 million illiterate persons. We have a much larger number of people who are rather low literate, and probably we are also having a new generation of learners who are coming to life and to the world of work without the foundational skills. And we know them from our own data. We know that 100 million additional learners who didn't acquire the basic and the foundational skills. So this non-digital, I would say, divide is deepened further by the digital divide, and there is this interplay between the non-digital and digital divide. And again, I'm borrowing from Andreas. So the significance of the challenge calls for action, and I think Andreas again mentioned we can do. I think we must do. We must act, and it's always very unfortunate that we recall literacy and adult literacy, youth literacy only on the 8th of September. When we look at the international landscape, when we look at the education agenda, there is much less attention to literacy and also to adult education broadly, more broadly. So we need to step up a bit the attention, and it's about the partnership. And I think that's the second point that I would like to highlight. It's a partnership between different organizations, national organizations, but also civil society, private sector being involved, and academia. And we have the pleasure to have Professor Wolf, Professor Mayo with us, and this interdisciplinary perspective. And that's what UNESCO chairs can bring as well to the discussion. Sorry. We can hear you, no worries. Sorry. The third point is that obviously this expansion of understanding of literacy is important. In some cases, we are speaking about literacies, and I would be very careful, particularly when we are speaking about, for example, financial literacy. Sometimes we are speaking about other type of literacies. They are important, but we shouldn't confuse, and we shouldn't also drift the policy attention from foundational, basic skills that are needed to engage in life and work with additional literacies that we will have to acquire. The last point that I would like to highlight, obviously, is that we would like to see international organizations working toward better understanding and data collection and measurement. There is important work done by OECD colleagues on PIAC. There is an important work that we are doing in monitoring SDG 4, but we are still far from having the perfect and the right tools to measure literacy and to measure the additional digital skills as well. And this is an effort that has to be continued, and to better understand and to have more evidence-based action for the work we are doing. What UNESCO will be doing in this area? First of all, let me recall that we have a strategy for youth and adult literacy that we have adopted 2 years ago, and this will remain our compass for the next 3 years. It's about policies, it's about the use of technology, it's about equity and inclusion with particular focus on gender equality, and it's about also measuring and monitoring the progress. We have also platforms that are supporting the work. We referred earlier, we have the Global Alliance for Literacy, that is an important platform where we can advance the dialogue and the collaboration among different stakeholders with the priority countries where we can achieve more impact. The Global Education Coalition, which was set up to respond to the COVID crisis, and that is also giving attention to adult literacy, in particular through education for program for literacy educators, and this is a work that we will continue doing and will be expanding, as mentioned by the Director General in her opening message. There is one important milestone next year. We will be organizing together with the Kingdom of Morocco the 7th International Conference on Adult Education, Confintia 7. This is a very critical moment for the international community. It's about setting a new agenda on adult education. The work that Subhi Tawil and his team are doing on the futures of education will determine also how we look at adult learning and education in a lifelong learning perspective. Subhi was referring to learning and learning. Probably lifelong learning means learning and relearning, and this is something that we will have to take forward. But it's about also the human-centered. Now, this means about the rights and how we can evolve from a right to education that was adopted in 1960 with a principal dimension on access to basic education to a right to lifelong learning. That is more than just access to education. It's about early learning, and we know now by all the research that has been conducted by different organizations, including Andrea's team, our teams, about the importance of early learning, but also about adult learning and their motivation for engaging in further learning and in lifelong learning. So Confintia in June 2022 will be an important moment to advance this agenda as well. Let me finish with a few words. First, word of thanks. Thanks to all the participants. Thanks to all the speakers who joined us during the last 2 days. Congratulations again to the laureates who have been awarded the Literacy Prize. It's an important moment for all of them, and we look forward to continuing being in touch with them and engaging, learning from practices that they have been engaged with. Let me say that this events and its organization could not be organized in such successful manner without the collaboration between UNESCO's colleagues at the headquarters, UNESCO Institute for Lifelong Learning, UNESCO Institute for Statistics, field offices, and all the colleagues who have been joining forces to celebrate with us International Literacy Day 2021. Thank you very much. Merci. Muchas gracias. See you. Bye.